very happy to be in a place, in a country, and certainly at a conference where I can say the word liberal and you guys know what it means. Because, yeah, from an American perspective, if I say to someone that I'm a liberal, and I wrote a book, my first book, Don't Burn This Book, I think is the best-selling book on classical liberalism in the last 40 years in America. But if I tell people I'm a liberal, they think that means a progressive. They think that means a leftist. And the word has just been completely mangled. So it's very refreshing to come here and even talk to some of your members of parliament who are in the Liberal Party. And in essence, they have a lot more in common with the conservatives of America. That's much of what we will talk about up here tonight. So I thought if we're going to talk about the right and where does liberty fit in this new right, and most of this, of course, I'll do from an American perspective, but a lot of it obviously translates to Australia. I think we have to start by talking about what happened to the left. And the reason we have to do that is because so much of what defines the right today, what defines MAGA, what defines Trump, what defines really the conservative movement, is a reaction to the excesses of the left. So, you know, there's always a conversation about when did the left gain all this power, how did they do it? Most of the answers, usually there was a sort of 40-year march through the institutions that most of you are aware of. They really just took over higher education. They moved down into high schools and then really into middle schools and even elementary schools. And that's, of course, where we got all of this woke stuff and the gender identity stuff and the, I would say, upending of our history and confusion around why America is fundamentally good and what our values are and all of these things. And they did it, and not only did they do it while I would say conservative-leaning people, or in this country I can say some of the good liberals, were out there building businesses and building families and actually doing things, changing industries, all of these things. And the progressives were very committed to the cause. And I think that really is how they, in essence, destroyed or overtook the Democrat Party in America, because the good liberals, which I suspect most of you in this room probably, from an American perspective, 20 years ago would have been Democrats, maybe sort of Bill Clinton Democrats, something like that. And that was sort of the mainstream take on liberalism. But the progressives came in and they were sort of liberals on steroids, right? Probably a little too many steroids. And they went in and they decided they would scream about everything, and everyone that disagreed with them was a racist and a bigot and a homophobe and all of the slurs. And it kind of worked. Actually, more than that, it more than kind of worked. It fully worked. They have, in essence, at this point, in 2025, purged all of the good liberals and pushed them to the right. So for the purposes of today's talk, we're talking about what's going on the right. And I'm really fascinated by this because I was a person of the left. I was in a lot of progressive circles. And about 10 years ago, I started saying, hey, liberals, we're not acting liberally. We're not defending free speech. We're silencing people. This was at the beginning of, cancel culture and wokeness and all of these things. And there was a real feeling that all the liberals were going to sort of be lost because the progressives were taking over the Democrat Party and the liberals would have nowhere to go because they would never team up with the conservatives. But then something amazing happened around 2016, really 2015, and that was Donald Trump. And Donald Trump came in and he was a Republican, so he was a conservative, but everyone knew he really wasn't a conservative, right? I mean, no one in their right mind, I think, thinks that Donald Trump is sort of a religious conservative, that he was sort of a New York liberal real estate guy, spoke gruffly, had to do all sorts of things in his previous life as a businessman and a TV host and all of those things. And he then came in and he actually, and this is a point I've really tried to make to a lot of people, and I think they get it, but it takes some time. He actually liberalized the conservative party. That's actually what MAGA is. Make America Great Again, really, is that he took the conservatives who were kind of okay with just losing elections and not really doing much. We do some nation building across the world. We do some tax cuts, things like that. But then he actually widened the tent. He widened the tent. One example would be that he is the first incoming first-time president who was ever for marriage equality. Now that certainly is not a conservative principle at all, right? Barack Obama, liberal, progressive hero, when he came in first time around, he was not for marriage equality. So in that sense, Donald Trump was more liberal, actually, than Barack Obama. Donald Trump also, he's been sometimes he's for tax cuts, sometimes he's for spending bills. He basically has been a big mix of things, but what did that do? It basically gave a home to the disaffected liberals, right? So when I talk about the disaffected liberals, if you just look at some of the people in Donald Trump's cabinet right now, he has Bobby Kennedy running HHS. Bobby Kennedy, his last name, Kennedy. This is a Democrat. He is supposed to be a Democrat. As a matter of fact, when I had him on my show when he was running, just in this last election, or he was running in the primary, which the Democrats basically made sure that there was no chance that he was going to beat Biden in the primaries, I had him on my show, and it was the first time we met, and I said to him, Bobby, I don't know if you're going to be a Republican by the end of this thing, but I promise you, you will not be a Democrat. And if you go back and watch the clip, you can see his eyes light up because he knew something was really, really rotten with the Democrat Party, that he as a liberal, as an old school liberal, limited government, laissez-faire economics, individual rights, all of the things that you guys believe in, he knew that the runway on that with this progressive movement was very, very short. And he knew that the plane would never get off the ground because they simply would not follow him. So somebody like Bobby Kennedy ends up in Donald Trump's cabinet. Then you could look at Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard was a progressive. She was a real progressive too. She wasn't just a liberal. she was on the left side of that. And she ran for president in the primary against Joe Biden. She was actually the last candidate still going. They all cut their deals. Pete Buttigieg and some of the other, Elizabeth Warren and the rest of them, Bernie Sanders, they all cut their deals and they all dropped out on the same day. But Tulsi Gabbard stayed in and she fought Joe Biden as long as she could. Hillary Clinton said she was a Russian asset, all of that stuff, but she was a Democrat. She was a lefty and a liberal, and now she is the director of national intelligence. And there's many other people like this. And Donald Trump also has brought in plenty of gay people and black people and all of the other things that don't really matter, of course. And he didn't hire them or bring them into the cabinet because of their identity. He brought them in because they're qualified. And that is a fundamental difference than what the Democrats have done over the last couple of years, where they brought in people specifically. Joe Biden said specifically that he brought in Kamala Harris as VP because she was a black woman, which is, from a liberal perspective, the most demeaning thing you could possibly say to someone, right? Why would you ever want to be hired for a job because of your skin color and your gender? It's completely and utterly irrelevant. Are you qualified to do the job? Now, from where I stand, she obviously was not qualified to do the job, and I think that was sort of borne out in her VP tenure and then her subsequent campaign. But as they purged all of these people, and as Donald Trump widened the MAGA tent, that gets us to the topic today. So how do we hold a political movement that has very different perspectives, that has very different policy prescriptions? You have these liberals that are generally a little more big government. They want more social services. They're obviously more liberal when it comes to, let's say gay marriage, which the ship has sailed on that, so it almost feels silly to talk about, or abortion would be a good one. You have now all of these people like Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Rogan. Think about Joe Rogan, who supported Donald Trump. Joe Rogan is a pot-smoking, MMA-watching podcaster, right? Mushroom-eating podcaster who no one in their right mind, and probably a lot more than that, but nobody in their right mind would think is a conservative. But he supported Donald Trump. Elon Musk, probably the single best example. Elon Musk, lifelong Democrat, until the midterms before this last election, had never voted Republican once. Then finally, when he moved a bunch of his companies to Texas from California because of progressive Gavin Newsom, he finally voted for a Republican congressperson in his district, took all of his companies out of California, high taxes, high regulation, moves them to Texas. That's the most perfect example of watching the entire country sort by politics right now. But certainly would never have considered himself a Republican. And now he's in that tent. So Elon, Tulsi, Bobby, me, Rogan, all of these people that 7, 10 years ago, all were liberals, are now part of the Republican Party. And interestingly, if you were to look at the Democrat Party, and I also have to say, it's quite fun coming here because you guys get all these references, right? Like there's no political person from an American perspective that I can bring up that I think you guys don't know. You're following all of it. You know, everyone has now come across, and the question really is, what's left on the Democrat side? Is there any room for the Democrats to have liberals? And there's basically one. There's a guy by the name of John Fetterman who is he's a Democrat from Pennsylvania. This is a guy who quite literally about 5 years ago, he had a couple strokes and had brain damage. And as he has healed, as his brain has healed, he is becoming more conservative. It's incredible to watch. I don't know if any of you saw the movie Awakenings with Robert De Niro and Robin Williams. It's literally that story. He is coming out of the coma and suddenly he's like, I'm for limited government. It's incredible. But they're primarying him. The Democrats are now primarying the one moderate left in the party. And then of course, you know, there's a couple people in Hollywood that still basically get it. There's, you know, Bill Maher, who's I think been the standard bearer for American liberalism for the past 40 years. Unfortunately, I think he gets to the wrong voting conclusion, but he's trying to stick it out with the Democrats. But now, so what do you do on the right? How do you defend individual rights? How do you defend liberty? How do you defend the things that we all care about when you're now sort of in bed with people that have different views? This is where I should bring up my friend Charlie Kirk for a moment, because Charlie, who was a good friend of mine, and we met around 2017, and we did a lot of these college events together. I was on the left and Charlie was on the right, and we debated on stage at colleges. It was before a lot of this stuff went crazy, and when we were doing it, we would go to these colleges and everybody would say to us the same thing. We would get the same criticism every single gig that we did, which was, oh, you know, you guys are making a big deal about this college thing, but when these kids get out to the real world, you know, the real world will show them what's up. And what we found was that the real world basically folded like a wet paper bag, right? They actually got out of colleges, they took over all of these institutions. But Charlie did something really interesting, which is, and this is, I think, gets to the crux of the challenge that we will have to merge conservatives and liberals in a healthy way, which is really what the American experiment is all about. And it's why I say that Donald Trump has been defending conservatism and liberalism from the forces on both sides that would pull us apart. Charlie had his own personal religious beliefs, right? He was an evangelical Christian. He had his faith. He talked about it very publicly, which is really not that welcomed in most American circles, certainly not in the mainstream. So we had differences, right? He absolutely believed in traditional marriage. He certainly was not thrilled when the Supreme Court changed the law on that. But he also understood fundamentally that America was not a religious theocracy. And that's more of the liberal side of him, that he could have his faith and then also understand that America was a secular society and that it's up to you personally to figure out how you integrate those two things. Well, that's partly what I see the challenge will now be for the people on the right, because, you know, Donald Trump's 79 years old. Obviously, this is going to be his last term. And the Republican Party is going to have to figure out which way to go. And there are forces pulling it in all sorts of ways right now. It's quite bizarre, actually, because, you know, Donald Trump, he's only in the midst of the first year of this term. So he's got 3+ years to go. I've personally been very happy with virtually everything that he's done. But now there are forces in the media, and I would say within his own party, and this is, I would call this sort of like the Tucker Carlson wing, that really want to push America into much more of an isolationist position. I think there's an awful lot of scapegoating going on and a bunch of other things that maybe we can get to in the Q&A. And Donald Trump, I think, has been a sort of buffer against that. And if America is going to hold, and America is going to be a place where we can have all sorts of people from all walks of life, you know, one of the things that's most interesting to me being here in your incredible country is that, you know, Australia and the United States, we're basically geographically the same size, but we have 350 million people. As I understand it, you have about 27 million people. Think about how crazy that is, the difference, just the density of the amount of people. And then if you really think about how America, we were the place for the last, we're rolling into our 250th anniversary next year. We were the shining beacon in the world where everyone from literally every corner on earth wanted to come to make a better life, and largely did that. But of course, the exchange in that is that you're going to have people that have different religious beliefs. You're going to have people that have different philosophic beliefs, that are going to have different lifestyles and different foods and different color, different clothing and music and all of these things. And America, much, much better than Europe, integrated these people properly. I think you guys have done it fairly well. It seems, I have to say, on this trip, it seems a little different in some of your cities. I was in Melbourne, and it felt like the integration situation was not going that well. But I would need to be there a little bit more, perhaps, to see that. But America has done that, and that is the promise of liberalism. And if the conservatives and the MAGA movement is to last, they are going to have to pick which way. Which way are we going to go on this? Are we going to be an America that is going to lead the world, that is going to defend liberal Western values, individual rights, universal human rights? Or are we going to do something that is different? And again, there are forces that want to turn America more into a sort of traditionally Christian country that want to do more. There's a wing of the Republican Party. I think you can see this with a little bit of the kind of Marjorie Taylor Greenes and some of the other Congress people that want to turn it into something a little bit more actually like AOC or Bernie would want, where the government is going to do absolutely everything. So Trump is basically trying to hold a very tenuous position. How do we balance all of these things and keep the widest tent possible? I honestly don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible. What I've said to my audience all the time is, and what I've said to the Trump people and anyone who will listen, is that I will stake out the position to be on the liberal side of the MAGA movement. And as long as the people to the further right of that are willing to live in the same country as me, then we're going to be okay, and we can win an awful lot of elections, and we can fix an awful lot of things. Trump has largely fixed the immigration situation, and we've fixed the borders. The economy is turning around. There's a lot of, we're going in with ICE now, which I know a lot of people don't like, but we're fixing some of the problems for the first time in America in a long, long time. So that really is the challenge. Can the liberals and the people who want limited government and individual rights and understand you're going to be you could be fundamentally different than your neighbor, but that all fits within the American promise, that actually is what the founders intended, can they fit with the forces of a conservative movement that definitely have impulses not to be part of that? That will be the great challenge. That is what I'm going to continue to do. I think that's probably, in some sense, a little bit of what your political battles are about as well. How do you figure out the blend between, if I understand it correctly, your liberal party, which is, again, closer to our conservative party, probably has far more in common right now with parties on the right than parties on the left. But if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak too much about your politics, but that's my impression so far. And that will be the challenge, really, for all of Western nations. Where do the liberals fit? Is liberal democracy something worth defending? I absolutely think that it is, and that will be the challenge.
You're soon going to have vaccines for cancer, heart disease, everything. So that 5% is taken care of. Now the remaining 95% of even the genetic mutations are not fully penetrant, which means they don't guarantee the disease. They can be modified by mind-body practices, meditation, spiritual experience, but they can also be modified through other things like sleep, good sleep, like stress management, like exercise, like healthy nutrition, sometimes with certain supplements, emotions, relationships, biological rhythm, circadian, when people have jet lag or they're working at night, their rhythms get out of whack. So when we know all this knowledge now, we know that 95% of disease is preventable, it's predictable, it requires your participation, it's a process, and many diseases are now reversible.
right, I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is legendary author, speaker, and spiritual guru Deepak Chopra. Deepak, I feel like I could have given you a much, much longer intro there. 90 plus books, Chopra Center. You've helped heal and spiritually connect literally millions of people for decades now. What do you consider yourself first professionally?
You know, Dave, I'm still trying to figure out what I'll do when I grow up. I don't know. Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. Well, I guess, we only have about 25 minutes, and I want to use the time wisely. I want to talk a little bit about some of the AI stuff you're doing. But for somebody that's tuning into this that doesn't know you, I can't imagine such a person exists. Deepak Chopra, what should they think of you first? It's sort of the same question, but I need a serious answer.
So, I'm trained as a medical doctor. I'm an internist, board certified. Then I studied what is called neuroendocrinology, which is brain chemistry. I have practiced as a licensed physician, California, Massachusetts, Florida. I still hold my licenses. I do my single credits. I teach at a couple of medical schools still. And then I kind of moved on to integrative medicine, mind-body medicine, and ultimately what, for lack of a better word, spiritual intelligence, and what people call the hard problem of consciousness. What is the universe made of? And how do we know it exists? So that's where I am right now.
All right. So I think people will understand this is going to be tough to do in 25 minutes because there's a lot of stuff here. So first off, I'm going to request a second interview before we even start this first one.
Okay. Sure.
So how much of what is wrong with us physically is actually a spiritual or mental problem?
Well, that's being too simplistic, so let me get you the science, okay? 5% of all disease is determined by what are called fully penetrant gene mutations, which a gene mutation is a genetic error. So that's what, think of it, a gene as a word, and think of DNA as the alphabet. And the word, of course, could be part of a sentence. The sentence could be part of a paragraph. Paragraph could be part of a chapter in a book. The human body is an epic of biological evolution, but also cosmic evolution, from all the way from the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years, to right now. You are a timeline, so am I, parallel timeline, of 13.8 billion years of evolution. And DNA is the alphabet, which is just four letters, A, T, C, G. Am I getting too complex?
So far, so good. I'm with you so far.
Okay. So the English language has 26 letters, but the alphabet of life is 4 letters: adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, A, T, C, G. Short. The alphabets arranged differently. Just like in English, 26 letters, you can create an epic. You could write Shakespeare with 26 letters, but life writes the whole story of existence in 4 letters. And you have 25,000 genes in your body, half of which you got from your parents. So mother gave you 12,500 or whatever, 12,000, father gave you 12,000, 24,000 genes. But in addition, you have 2 million bacterial genes. So technically speaking, you have more bacterial genes than human genes. You are a few human cells hanging on to a bacterial column. You are the evolution of bacterial consciousness. Anyway, 5% of disease is due to mutations. Think of a typo. So you have the Encyclopedia Britannica, that's your body, and there's one chapter that has one word that has a typo, and that's a mutation. And 5% of those mutations are fully penetrant. That means if you have that mutation, you're going to get the disease no matter what you do. Those are known gene mutations. One example is BRCA gene, which is a gene for breast cancer. So the reason I mention it, Angelina Jolie had that gene or has that gene, and she had a preventive mastectomy to prevent her from getting breast cancer, which was the right thing to do. Now, where we are today with our technology is that we already have a technology called gene editing. So you can cut and paste genes, technically speaking, the way you cut and paste your email. This technology is now approved for sickle cell anemia and a couple of neurological disorders, but soon it'll be for cancer, heart disease, autoimmune illness. So those 5% of genetic mistakes will be taken care of. Also, thanks to COVID, and during COVID, people were doing a lot of research on vaccines, notwithstanding that a lot of people have crazy ideas about vaccines, but vaccines are very effective in preventing infections. And I grew up in India where, I saw people dying of polio, smallpox, all gone now because of vaccines. So you're soon going to have vaccines for cancer, heart disease, everything. So that 5% is taken care of. Now, the remaining 95% of even the genetic mutations are not fully penetrant, which means they don't guarantee the disease. They can be modified by mind-body practices, meditation, spiritual experience, but they can also be modified through other things like sleep, good sleep, like stress management, like exercise, like healthy nutrition, sometimes with certain supplements, emotions, relationships, biological rhythm, circadian. When people have jet lag or they're working at night, their rhythms get out of whack. So when we know all this knowledge now, we know that 95% of disease is preventable, it's predictable, it requires your participation, it's a process, and many diseases are now reversible through these epigenetic modulations. So that's a long answer that disease is complicated, but only 5% is fully genetically determined, probably less. According to the latest statistics, 2% of disease is fully guaranteed by genetic mutations. Technology will take care of that. The rest is how you live your life, basically.
So if we can take care of, through gene editing, the 5%, and then if we do the other stuff that you just mentioned, eat right, sleep right, supplements, good spiritual health, and all of those things, are we on the horizon of something else that we will come to think of as human in some sense?
You will be able to extend your health span to about 120 years. And after that, probably not, because we have genetic programs for death in our body. There's a phenomenon in biology called apoptosis, programmed cellular death. And that's very good because if a cell forgets to die, it becomes cancerous. So actually, death serves a purpose. Your stomach cells die every 5 days, so you can make new ones. Your skin cells die once a month. Your skeleton recycles every 3 months, etc., etc. So death is built into our system for renewal, for recycling. And what we call physical death is the same thing. The universe renews life through physical death, through biological organisms. We reproduce ourselves and we recycle. Matter recycles, energy cycles, information recycles. And now the evidence says that consciousness recycles. And if by consciousness we mean your soul, then your soul recycles as a new body, new mind, new brain, everything. To stop death would be the worst thing we'd do. We'd be mummified. We might as well be in a museum, like a plastic flower or a marble statue. So death is very important for renewal of life.
Would a fairly simple way to look at that be, in essence, if you could not die, really you couldn't rejuvenate? I mean, you couldn't reincarnate.
You couldn't. So you do need death. So death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. Death is the continuum of birth and death. Life is the continuum of birth and death. And it's already happening. Every moment cells are dying in your body. New ones are being born. So it's already happening. You don't have the body of a baby now, or an infant, or a teenager, unless you want to run for president. Then you can have an old body, and then you can have emotions. That's a qualification to run for office these days. That you stop your emotions at the age of 8. You don't recycle them, or you don't evolve. But otherwise, in a normal development process, birth and death is a dance, okay? And it's a healthy dance. But given that, you still will be able to live 120 years, die free of disease, been there, done that, have a party, and celebrate your death, which is, I'm 79 years. That's my next chapter, statistically, although I'm in good health. So I find the prospect of death and renewal very exciting. It's the most creative thing you can do.
It's an incredible way to look at it. When did you realize the importance of the spiritual element? I mean, as someone that came from integrative medicine, so you were obviously looking at the body a little bit differently than traditional Western medicine. But when did you realize that the spiritual part was so deeply connected?
So this is what happened. I was doing neuroendocrinology in Boston with the number one expert in the world. He's now 101, by the way.
Wow. And
if he finds a snake in his garden, he dissects the brain to look for neurochemicals. So we were looking at neurochemicals in the 1970s and 1980s, like dopamine, oxytocin, opiates, serotonin. Now everybody knows these things. Then it was like, oh, what are these things? The molecules of emotion, we call them. And these molecules trigger your responses in the body. So, we know that serotonin and dopamine are triggered by emotions. So your emotions and the neurochemicals and your immune system and your endocrine system, hormonal, they're all connected. So there's a discipline called psycho-neuro-immuno-endocrine modulation, which is all this combined thing. That led me to integrative medicine because my training was in brain chemistry. Then I realized that, this is all about the mind. Is there something deeper called the spirit? And then I realized that this is actually the number one and number two open question in science. The number one question in science is, what is the universe made of? And without going into details, the answer is that the universe is made of nothing. It starts as nothing. And then it looks like everything. So how does nothing become everything? And how do we become aware of that? That's New York music.
No, I was saying there's something sort of deeply profound about the sirens behind you as you're explaining the meaning of life. Yeah.
The music of New York. So anyway, so what was I saying? The heart problem.
Out of nothing came something.
Nothing. Came something, not something, everything. And then came something that not only there's existence, this whole thing, but we are conscious of it. How do we know we exist? That is called the hard problem of consciousness. And so if you go on Google or AI and you say, what are the 125 unsolved problems in science? The number one is, what's the universe made of? And number two is, if it's made of nothing, why does it look like something? And how do we know that it exists? And so that's called the hard problem of consciousness. And I struggled with that along with many people, and people are still struggling. And then I realized that we are struggling with this problem because we think there's a physical universe made of atoms and molecules and gravity and force fields. And then we say, how does these physical molecules create thought, imagination, feeling, love, compassion, joy, equanimity, self-awareness, existential anxiety, the fear of death? How does matter create this? And became obvious to me it doesn't. It's the other way around. You start with consciousness that leads to perceptual activity, which is seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. That leads to cognitive ability, which is thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires. So in my mind, that became an obsession. And then I now hooked up with scientists who actually understand what I'm saying, because 99% of scientists think I'm crazy. I'm wacko. So, but finally I found some who agree with me. And we're tackling this problem. So I'm writing a new book with a cognitive scientist, world famous. It's called Beyond the Matrix, How Conscious Beings Create the Universe. So the universe doesn't exist in the absence of you and me. So if everybody disappeared, there would be no universe.
How much of a challenge is that in and of itself to just find scientists who can talk about this stuff?
There's like 1%, but I've found some really good scientists. And my next book is with a guy called Don Hoffman. He's a cognitive scientist at the University of California, and he's one of the best, and he wrote a book a few years ago, The Case Against Reality, which means the physical world is not real. It's a simulation. It's like the Matrix.
The Matrix.
It's the Matrix. And he came up with the math and the physics and all that. The book was criticized, but I championed it and we became friends. And he's very credible. Now you go all the mind-body conferences. He's like the keynote speaker. And I just saw him yesterday on Instagram speaking on something. So we're writing a book together. He knows the math, he knows the physics, and I know the spiritual part.
That's super interesting to me. I often talk about on the show how, in essence, because of the phone, we're in the matrix in some extent because we are now the battery for the digital world. So I absolutely will read that. Let me ask you something, because obviously on my day-to-day basis, I'm doing more in the political realm rather than the spiritual realm. So this is a nice break for me, to be frank. But what do you make of our, if this is a fair term, what do you make of our collective spiritual experience right now? The level of which, the anxiety that people feel endlessly, the obsession with politics, the culture wars, all of these things, the endless scrolling on the phones, the inundated, endless slamming of news in their faces. If collective spiritual awareness is a thing, if that's the right term, or if you want to give me another one.
Our collective mind, leave the spirit alone, because the spirit is infinite possibilities. But our collective mind today is insane. Okay, we have war, we have terrorism, we have climate change, notwithstanding people who said there's no climate change. We have climate change. We have war, we have terrorism, we have mechanized death, we have drones, we have chronic disease, we have polarization, because the world is being run by gangsters, and we call them leaders, but they're only interested in power mongering, cronyism, corruption, money laundering, and everything that is basically, they're gangsters, they're not leaders. And we elect them, so we can't even blame them. Okay, so we're all insane. I think a few years when I recognized that, I decided to check out. I still watch the news, but it doesn't affect me because I look at it as collective insanity. And if we don't think it's insane, then we are also insane. We're declaring our insanity. There are now solutions thanks to AI. And thanks to what we know, there's solutions for everything, collective solutions. So, if you have shared vision, collective creativity, you create a spiritual, emotional bond, you have maximum diversity, another bad word these days, but diversity is the fundamental essence of creativity. Maximum diversity, shared vision, emotional, spiritual connection, complementing each other's strengths. Think of a really good sports team. If we could emulate a sports team collectively, we could change the world. But I don't see it happening. I have seen medieval minds and modern technologies, perfect recipe for extinction for an insane species.
So, well, we definitely can't end with that, but we are short on time here, and I really do hope we can pick this up for a more extended interview, hopefully in person. But so tell me this: so how are you leveraging AI to solve that, to solve what you just laid out there, which is like Deepak Chopra going dark? I can't do that.
So I have my own AI, deepakchopra.ai, but I've also created a community, deepakchopra.com, where there are 3 or 4 principles: love in action, attention, affection, appreciation, acceptance, insight, creativity, humanity. And we collectively embark on the change we want to see in the world by first becoming the change ourselves, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi. You can't create peace by being an angry peace activist. That's an oxymoron. It'll get you the Nobel Prize, but you'll never create peace if you don't have peace in yourself. Peace can only be created by those who are peaceful. So how do we have 1 billion people who are peaceful, who are creative, who have love, empathy, compassion, joy, equanimity, and who are there for each other so we can collectively transform the world? It's a dream, but, it may or may not happen, but then what's a dream for? That's what I'm doing now. At my age, I'm creating global communities of empathy, compassion, love, creativity, insight, intuition, and joy. Joy is the only measure of success. Otherwise, you wasted your life.
Do you feel at all times that you're doing it all right all the time, that, in some sense, because you are the guru in this field, that you're able to...
No, I don't believe in gurus. In fact, the word guru, spell it for me.
G-U-R-U?
G-U-R-U.
Ah.
The only gurus.
As I said it, I saw what was happening there.
So, yes, let's all be gurus of ourselves. And then we have hope.
Deepak, we absolutely will do this again. I thank you just for this tiny intro. We're going to link to your AI and to the website down below. And
thank you.
And good luck. Good luck in New York with all those sirens.
Yeah, I live here. I live here to see that it doesn't bother me.
Inner peace amongst the craziness. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much.
If you're looking for more soulful vibes to spark your inner guru, check out our spirituality playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a wide variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. All right, everybody, this is the Rubin Report. I'm Dave Rubin. It's March 27th, 2025. We are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, on Locals. I know you've tapped that notification bell, so I don't even need to finish this. Yeah, you got it. We got a Rubin Report Locals community Q&A. We did not have a post-game show yesterday because I was on Piers Morgan immediately after the show, and we can't have a post-game show today because I got to get over to New York because I'm on the #1 show in late night, Greg Gutfeld, or Gutfeld with an exclamation point, tonight and tomorrow's show because I'm on Jesse Waters and I think Fox and Friends and a whole bunch of other media stuff in New York. Tomorrow's 11 a.m. show should be the highlights of Gutfeld. Thank you for bearing with us. I promise you some good laughs. I can already guarantee it in advance. I'm going to poke and noodle that little Greg Gutfeld guy. So we got a couple stories of the week that are just, we're not doing hardcore politics today. It's going to be a little bit of stuff from overseas. And then is there going to be a Islamic mega city in Texas? We'll find out. That's what we're doing on the Rubin Report today. All right, so we showed you the video last week of Conor McGregor, current MMA legend, former MMA fighter, at the White House, really making the case for Ireland being for the Irish. I know that that's very controversial, a pot of gold, a leprechaun, a rainbow, a Guinness, that sort of thing. Not necessarily a place that should just be overrun with immigrants from the Middle East and from Africa. It's really not controversial to say that. There's nothing wrong with fair-skinned white people. How you doing, Connor? Good to see you, as always. Check this out from Inevitable West. Breaking: Ireland's Director of Public Prosecutions is now considering charging Conor McGregor with incitement for hatred for posts he made on X back in 2023. He could face up to 2 years in prison. This is Trump-style legal warfare and blatant election interference. So we've been through all of this, guys. We've been through this many, many times here in the United States with Donald Trump. And now it appears that it's happening to Conor McGregor in Ireland. These are posts that he put up years ago. Clearly, nobody was looking into these posts until he shows up at the White House. Kind of implies he's going to announce a run for president, then announces it, I think the next day, maybe 2 days later. Conor McGregor tweeted this. I'll even try to do it in an Irish accent. Fact! For the people of Ireland, I stand my ground. May our truth never be silenced. The fact is, if there is 7 years of zero resistance inside Oris un Toran towards government, Ireland is done for. Magnify where we are right now times 7,000. I would prefer to sail my yachts than have to approach the soulless, colourless combines of Dale Ireland every day. But if I do not, I am well aware of Ireland's faith, and I will never let that happen. Vote McGregor. The future of our country depends on it. Where's me freaking shillelagh? No, it was a little Scottish. Kind of worked. Yeah. So people are all focused on this now, and they're going, well, what the hell is happening in Ireland? Like, it's interesting. If you think of all the different countries in the world, okay, Spain is for Spanish people, Britain's for British people. And we know that these things have largely changed. And how do you define what your country is and what your culture is and all of that? There's something about Ireland. You think of the rolling greens and the golf courses and the beer and the leprechauns. Like, it seems pretty straightforward. There's a country for Irish people. Not to say black people can't live there or religious minorities or anything else. But like, it seems like a kind of straightforward one. Like, if you're kind of pale, you got reddish hair, you're good to go. However, it's changing. Here's some video of Ireland's St. Patrick's Day festival. All right, so look, it's nice to see some people wearing green, but you've got all kinds of different flags. You've got all kinds of different garb. Remember, Ireland is not a melting pot the way America is. I like the Irish healthcare workers for Palestine. How do they feel about the Irish traditions and culture? You have to wonder. So that, in essence, is a visual example of what Conor McGregor is fighting against. And no, it does not mean that he is racist or anything like that. Tracy O'Mahony, who's an ex-political commentator, wrote this. In June 2024, the Irish government voted to opt Ireland into the EU Migration and Asylum Pact against the wishes of the Irish people. Ireland has until June of 26 to pass the necessary laws needed to enact the pact. Since June of 2024, there has been silence from the government regarding the pact. Less than 1 week ago, Conor McGregor stood on the world stage and declared that Ireland has a mass, unvetted, uncontrolled immigration problem, and that should he run and be elected president of Ireland, he would do all in his power to challenge the pact. Today, the Minister for Justice, Jim O'Callaghan, has secured government approval to submit Ireland's national implementation plan for the EU Asylum and Migration Pact to the European Commissioner, with Minister of State for Migration, Colm Brophy, stating that we are not waiting for June 26 to make changes to our systems. Be under no doubt that the government are running scared, because if Conor McGregor secures a nomination needed to run for the presidency, and if he can run on an immigration platform, he stands a good chance of being elected the next president of Ireland. So what is the answer? The government will do everything in their power to remove debate around the EU Migration Pact by endeavoring to pass all of the necessary laws before November 2025. This government is rotten to the core. So you see what's happening here. It's the same thing that we're seeing in so many of these countries, whether it's Britain or France, or partially what we even had to do here in America, certainly what's going on in Canada. The native people of a country who wish to have Western values and who wish to maintain their culture and everything else don't want to just be overrun with people and have to live under the whims and wishes of unelected bureaucrats that live somewhere in Brussels. It's not much more complicated than that, and it doesn't make anyone racist, and it's just fine if an Irishman wants to go to the pub with his shillelagh, have a Guinness, and, smack around his wife after. Or maybe not that part, but you know what I'm saying. Conor McGregor tweeted this, against the wishes of the Irish people, modus operandi of a government that has long since abandoned the voices of its people, the people of Ireland. Everything said in the White House true, and we fight, fight, fight. Hey guys, let's get real for a sec. Anyone else feel like they're drowning under credit card bills, personal loans, or maybe even some leftover medical debt? It's like no matter how hard you work, your money's just slipping away to lenders instead of staying with you. I've been there and it's exhausting. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to stay this way, and that's where PDS Debt comes in. PDS Debt isn't just about managing your debt, it's about taking charge of it. Their platform digs into your specific financial situation, not some one-size-fits-all nonsense, and builds a plan that's tailored just for you. But they're not here to slap a Band-Aid on it. They're about finding a path to financial freedom that actually works with your life. And get this, no minimum credit score required. Whether your credit's taken a beating or it's just okay, PDS Debt is ready to help you save more, knock out that debt faster, and finally start building up your savings again. Here's what you need to do. Get started at pdsdebt.com/Rubin to complete your free debt assessment to see what options are available to you. Every day you wait, it's costing you money. Get started with your free debt analysis in just 30 seconds at pdsdebt.com/Rubin. That's pdsdebt.com/Rubin. Take back control by visiting pdsdebt.com/Rubin. You've got this. Let's make it happen. And we thought this was interesting. Here's just a guy that was going around. He appears to be a local Irish journalist, going around talking to people about Conor McGregor and the immigration problems and much more. And this is just a regular lady. And yeah.
Would you support Conor McGregor if he were to become the president of Ireland?
Yes, I would definitely support Conor McGregor. What Conor McGregor said in the White House last week was extremely accurate and very, very true of how the people of Ireland, North and South, feel about illegal mass migration. Now, I fully understand that we've all made mistakes, and some people might say Conor's made mistakes in the past. Well, guess what? So have I. I've made a lot of them. It doesn't mean that what I say today is not true. And he was speaking facts.
Do you think Conor McGregor is the last chance for Ireland before they go too far in the wrong direction?
I'll tell you this. I'm frightened for the direction that we're going in, and we need a real big change, and I think it has to be something like the Donald Trump in America, and Conor McGregor, from what I can see, is maybe our best hope.
First off, that woman's great. She wants to run for politics here in America. Come on over, lady. Get on board. Yes, we've all made mistakes. Nobody's perfect. It does not mean the truth that Conor McGregor or she is laying out today is wrong. What was his name? Nick Shirley? Nick Shirley is the name of the guy, by the way, who was doing that interview there. And again, none of this has anything to do with racism. What they're realizing is they're losing their country. And now I want to connect this to something that's happening here in America. This story is really, really wild. So in Plano, Texas, which is just outside of Dallas, and Texas, obviously a huge, huge state. There's an awful lot of land. They're doing an awful lot of building there. And it's one of, the big three states, I would say, Texas, Florida, and Tennessee, that all of the blue state people are fleeing to. Well, there have been plans put into place for a giant Islamic mega city. But don't take my word for it. Take this guy's word for it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, I'm sure many of you have heard of the amazing project that we're doing known as Epic Cities. We are, alhamdulillah, constructing an entire city half an hour from downtown Dallas, literally 30 minutes from our own Plano Masjid over here. It's going to be a city of over 1,000 people. Alhamdulillah, we launched this website last year and we sold the entire phase 1 within days. Because of the demand, we are now opening up Epic Ranches. Epic Ranches is an exclusive opportunity for those who want to be within minutes of Epic City, but also want larger plots. We have 2 Epic Ranches. Epic Ranches 1 begins with 1 acreage and goes up to 5 acreage. And Epic Ranches 2 has plots of ½ acre and also investment opportunities for those who want to build condominiums. Brothers and sisters, this is a limited time opportunity. It is an amazing time to invest for the future, not only in yourselves, but of your children after you. We are inshallah ta'ala going to change the entire da'wah scene by demonstrating to the world what it means to be a Muslim living in the West.
Okay, there's a bunch of things to talk about here. First off, if you're an American any American has any right to live anywhere. There's no such cities. That's a Christian city. There might be a city where mostly Christians live. There might be a city where mostly Muslims live, Dearborn, Michigan. There might be a city where mostly Jewish people live, Little Enclave in Brooklyn. All these things are possible. But you can't stop other people from living there. Now, I don't know that this group of people have stopped anybody, but do you think you'd be welcome there if you were a Jewish family? Do you think a Christian family would be welcome there? Do you think you'd be able to open up any other type of place of worship besides a mosque? You think 3 Christian families could come in and open up a church? Do you think the Jainists are going to be welcome over there? How's it going to go for, I don't know, gays or lesbians or the bis or whatever else? So this does represent I would say, a real divergence from what America is all about. And interestingly, Texas, almost 10 years ago, did pass a law banning Sharia law, which is obviously Islamic religious law, which dictates really over, it's a religious system and a political system over the people's lives who choose to be part of it. Lara Logan, who's an actual investigative journalist, she wrote this, breaking, Attorney General Ken Paxton announces investigation into Islamic mega city development in Plano, Texas. Epic, and that's what it is right there. Look, it is worth thinking about this stuff, guys, and it doesn't make you bigoted to say, okay, this group of people over here shouldn't have a city in the United States that is just for them, that won't be accommodating to other people. You want to have whatever your religious beliefs are, and you want to have your places of worship and your way of life and all of your things, that's fine. But we don't want to take the beautiful melting pot of America and turn it into the sort of segregated version of Europe. We do not want to do that. So we'll see what happens in Texas. I don't think they're going to put up for it, and we will see for sure. Guys, let's talk about G2 for a second. We'll have a RubinReport.locals.com community Q&A in just a sec. You guys know I'm all about logic and reason. Well, here's some logic. If your feet are killing you at the end of the day, you need better shoes. That's why I love G2 shoes by Gravity Defier. Unlike trendy sneakers, these are built on real shock-absorbing technology. Their patented VersoShock system absorbs impact, returns energy, and helps align your body so whether you're walking, running, or standing all day, it feels effortless. Right now, my listeners get 30% off orders over $120. Just text Rubin30 to 91888 or visit gdefy.com and use code Rubin30 at checkout. Use logic, choose comfort, Gdefy. All right, community Q&A, here we go. Olaf says, dogs are pack animals. Would you ever get a buddy for Clyde? They really do entertain each other. I think we have some pictures of Clyde from this morning. There's Clyde right there. He's hanging out on the couch. He's taken over that one cushion because the kids have taken over pretty much everything else, and they've got their little dome there in the corner. I kind of like hanging out on the dome. It's pretty cool. Would we ever get another dog? No, not at this juncture. There's a lot of running around and food all over the place and messes and everything else. Clyde, he's a great dog. Many of you know the story. Got him right before lockdowns, or just as lockdowns were starting. Our dog before, Emma, had just passed away, 16 years old. We had just put her down. We didn't want to get another dog, but I heard they were going to kill all these dogs at shelters. I ran into a shelter. I didn't even have a mask. Saved him. He's with us. He's great. He's a good guard dog, but it's just a bit much. It's a bit much. I would love maybe in another time, or if we move to a farm one day, having more animals in general and maybe some more dogs. I don't know. We'll see. But right now, we're focusing on small humans. That's where we're at the moment. Elizabeth says, do you think leftists will understand that siding with jihadists is dangerous before they're thrown from a roof, or as they're being thrown from a roof? Well, generally, as you're being thrown from a roof, you do start rethinking things. I mean, look, look, Queers for Palestine. And as I wrote in Don't Burn This Book, Queers for Palestine is very different than Palestine for Queers. How do these queers, whatever that means, I don't know, are they gay, or they're just, they got a little of everything, or they got nothing, or whatever it is, but how do they think they would be treated by Hamas? So we picture the Hamas guys with the masks and the thing and the knife and the gun and the whole thing. Like, do you think that they would like you? So the problem with burying your head in the sand is that you just get buried a little bit low. You just get beheaded a little bit lower on the neck. It does not work. And this sort of what they call the red-green alliance, the alliance between the Islamists and the communists, it is, and that's in essence what the the queers are, it is not going to end well for you guys. Like you can bow to them forever, and either you will live on your knees or you will be beheaded. It's as simple as that. Rich on the farm, I believe it was your birthday yesterday, Rich. Happy birthday. Says, have you noticed how disingenuous people often start with "so you think" as a way to mischaracterize your opinion and then criticize what they hallucinate? So when I was reading this question before, I like to take a quick glance. Before that immediately reminded me of one of Jordan Peterson's greatest hits. This is when Jordan and I were on tour. This is back in early 2018. He went on Kathy Newman's show in Britain, and this illustrates perfectly what you're laying out right there.
So you say, I mean, that sounds pretty bad. You're saying
It's
there's a
bad.
crime, but you're just saying that's the way it is.
And
So
that you
you're
can
saying
rely on.
women, is that what you're saying? But you're saying basically, well, that's just a fact of
No,
life.
it's saying
Women
it
aren't
doesn't
necessarily
matter because I'm very, very, very careful with my words.
But you're saying it's not. You say women, so you're saying women are just more sensible. So you're saying that. So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine. But still women aren't going to make it. That's what you're really
It
saying.
depends on your measurement technique.
To succeed is what you're saying.
Motion.
You're saying that women aren't intelligent enough to run these top companies?
No, I didn't say that at all.
You said that.
First off, Jordan has really had to glow up over the years too, huh? But that thing where Jordan, do you know anyone in the history of the world that speaks more clearly than Jordan? Does he do a lot of high-level ideas and sometimes you have to think about what he's saying for a sec? Yeah, but does he choose his words carefully and make a declarative statement every time something comes out of his mouth? The answer is obviously yes. So that's a perfect example of what you're talking about. There's this condescending way of, here, I said something, oh, so what you're saying is, and then it's never exactly what the person was saying. Leftists do this constantly. They have a lot of linguistic tricks. I think it's also why so many of them, when I play these clips of The View or some of these other shows with these women, they talk like Valley girls. There's something about that. Or even something about, why are all the men on CNN asexual? There's something about that a way of thinking that leads to weird mnemonic tricks and speech patterns and all of these things. I would prefer somebody who just speaks from the heart, tells you what they think. You go from there and see what happens, whether you agree with them or not. Shecky Green says, in my view, I smell a rat. How on earth does the most prolific Donald J. Trump hater anywhere get in this restricted chat room? So, of course, you're talking about this Signal story, and there's a lot to think about here. I really, really tried to cover it as cleanly and honestly as possible, fully admitting and accepting that if this was a Biden administration thing, I'd probably be going a little bit harder on it because Biden wasn't competent. Nobody around him was competent. The entire Biden administration actually was a scandal. And as the years go by, it will become more and more obvious. But as it pertains to this, there's this group chat. You've got JD, you've got Tulsi, you've got Marco, Pete Hegseth, you've got some of the primo all-stars of the administration in there. They're debating and discussing what their plans are as far as military strikes with the Houthis while we're doing it. So it wasn't some sort of secret that we were doing anything against the Houthis to get these trading ports open in the Red Sea. And then there's now some debate because Jeffrey Goldberg, who is in essence a leftist, he's an Atlantic never Trumper guy, somehow got in the chat. It sounds like Mike Waltz, NSA Mike Waltz, put him in the chat, or whoever set up the chat through Mike Waltz, wasn't one of his guys did it. So was there an absolute moronic kind of boomer level screw up of who got in the chat? Yeah. Have we all accidentally texted the wrong person because you think you're texting one friend whose name is Frank and it turns out you texted the other Frank? Everyone's done it. Have you accidentally put someone in whatever? That doesn't excuse any of it, but that's just like a flat out obvious mistake. Now, I think you're arguing that perhaps there's something a little more nefarious there, like how did maybe someone else put him in Signal? Perhaps. I don't think anything's off the table, actually. The real question here is, if you read what was going on in the thread, which we showed you much of this week, it's like there's honest debate happening there. And JD's talking about how do we frame this properly for the American people who may not have an appetite for it and everything else. That's also the backdrop of the fact that the strikes all worked, right? The strikes, no Americans got hurt or anything else. And we sent a warning to the Houthis, you got to stop doing this. Okay, fine. The real question now is, what do you do about Mike Waltz, who apparently is the guy that let him in, or someone that he sets up his phone or whatever. And then I saw all sorts of people, and I got into a big debate on this on Piers Morgan, claiming that you're not allowed to use Signal for classified information. That is actually still a little unclear to me. We showed you the video yesterday of incoming CIA Director Ratcliffe saying that he was given a computer with Signal on it and told by the CIA people that he's allowed to communicate on there. So there's a lot of stuff here. So I don't think using Signal is illegal for these people. The question is, how long does the kind of scandal last? In some sense, and I'm just giving you the pure politic version of this. I'm not giving you like the pure legal version. In some sense, I think Trump just has to plow through this thing. Waltz did something stupid. Trump has to decide if he wants to fire him or not. That seems fairly obvious, again, unless something really weird happened. But beyond that, I think you just keep moving forward. Nothing in that chat was anything different than what these people are saying publicly. It showed thoughtful policy and debate, and that's all good. Crafty Barb says, how do we get out of this mess? I'm not sure which mess you're talking about, Crafty Barb, but it seems like we're in less messes than we were, say, 6 months ago, right? Like, there's some stuff. The Signal thing is something. Ireland's got some stuff going on. There's some problems all over the world. But like right now, how do you get yourself out of this mess? How about stand up straight with your shoulders back, tell people what you think, fight for what you believe in, live in a place with like-minded people so you can build great things together, build a family, do that kind of stuff. I think that is pretty solid generally, even without knowing what specific mess you're talking about. Susan says, less educated people can be controlled and paid less. So is that why you allowed 12 to 20 million illegally into our country? I think what you're referencing there, Susan, is we played a clip of Sunny Hostin. God bless that racist loon, Sunny Hostin, on the Don Lemon podcast. And she was basically saying, we need public education because if we don't have public education, then everyone's going to be stupid. Of course, never referencing the fact that test scores are going down. Kids can't read at 5th grade levels until they're in 8th grade in certain places. Like there's so many, like and they're being taught all the wrong things and everything else. But of course, you're completely right. Everything they say can just be peeled back so easily. And it's just pure nonsense. Like, okay, so you're right. And right. So you're connecting it to the immigration thing. So it's like, all right, let all these people in and they'll work our jobs. Then they'll be replaced by robots. Then they'll go to state schools and they'll get government handouts. And what will we have at the end? While at the same time, you told them that they moved to a systemically racist place, Sonny. It's strange, Sonny, because you aren't going anywhere because you're making an awful lot of money telling people how terrible it is here. Let's talk about crowd health, and then we got more questions on the other side. Hey guys, let's talk about something that drives me up the wall, health insurance. I mean, is there anything more frustrating? That's exactly why I'm excited to tell you about Crowd Health. This isn't your typical health insurance. It's a smarter, better way to handle healthcare through crowdfunding. Instead of funneling your hard-earned cash to big insurance companies that seem to make a profit by not paying your bills, Crowd Health flips the script. They're shaking things up by cutting out the middleman and making healthcare straightforward and affordable. So how does it work? With Crowd Health, you're joining a health insurance alternative that's all about real support. For just $175 a month for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you get access to a community ready to step up when you need it most. We're talking about telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and tons of other perks. No doctor networks holding you back. The best part, you're part of the crowd, a group of folks like you and me who pitch in to cover each other's unexpected medical costs. It's simple, it's human, and it's a game changer. Here's the deal. Let Crowd Health help you with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months by using code DAVE at joincrowdhealth.com. Oh, and a quick note, Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com. Code DAVE. Trust me, your wallet and your sanity will thank you. Tarp says, what's brown and sticky? Who selected the questions today? Joseph, what is brown and sticky? Jello. A Jello pudding pop. It's delicious and it's brown and it's sticky. Theo, do you want one? NY 53813. Lake and Riley was white. Does Tiffany Cross care? Oh, well, what you're referencing is that CNN clip that we showed you with Scott Jennings getting into it with this girl, Tiffany Cross. And of course, what she's basically arguing is that Trump is racist because, we're deporting people and some of these people happen to be brown. And she said something like, oh, and if they were taking white babies away from their mothers, we'd be up in arms. And it's like, they're not taking brown babies away. There were no brown babies put on those planes that went to El Salvador Salvador. But then he brought up the point, Scott Jennings brought up the point, well, how about we care about Laken Riley, et cetera? Laken Riley, young girl, happened to be white, murdered by an illegal immigrant. Well, let's put it this way. If she was black, more people would know her name. I think we know that much. We did live through BLM, did we not? But that's the sad thing. Like, if you don't really have, if your principles are all connected to whatever the political hot button thing is of the day, you're going to take any position and over time seem crazy. That basically sums up the modern progressive. If you have principles, like actual principles, then you can hold them regardless of the political trends. And it's one of the reasons that Scott Jennings is just doing a bang-up job over on CNN. I honestly think they might be like it's like they're all being punked right now. They're like, what idiot? Can we get another idiot to sit with this guy? Because those are the clips that go viral, even if it makes our network look bad. Marcus says, doesn't Jasmine Crockett's gaslighting remind you of that other relay runner who hit the one in the head with the baton and then claimed it was an accident? Do we have video of this? This is incredible. I don't know how we didn't show this on the show earlier in the week. Look at this. Look at this. That's not how that's not how you do the relay. Everyone knows the relay. You're running, and then the person in front of you is running, and they back here, and then you don't hit them over the baton. That's like a perfect visual example of what Jasmine Crockett is. But that's what all the Democrats are at this point. That's actually a great example of just like, that's her in AOC, right? AOC was running in front of her. She couldn't take it. She has now banged AOC in the head with the crazy baton. AOC is off going that way. She's hanging out with Bernie for a little bit. But watch out. AOC could have a comeback. She can get a bigger baton and smack Crockett. And that will be that. All right, one more for you, and then I got to get on a plane to New York. Izzy says, what is the best dessert and why is it ice cream? Well, Izzy, you are absolutely right. It is ice cream. I don't do much dessert these days, although it was Connor's birthday. We went out. You know what we did? You people will appreciate this. So you know Connor loves Chili's. Everyone knows it. Millions of people across the world know that Connor loves Chili's. We told him all day long that we were going to Chili's, and he was so excited. He dressed up in his Chili's outfit. It was the whole thing, and we were talking about the salad bar and the wings and the baby back ribs and the sauce all over your face. And then Phoenix said to me, Dave, the Rubin report's a professional operation. Can we do a little bit better than Chili's? And we took him to my favorite Mexican joint in Miami. It's called Coco in Coconut Grove. And we got did we have any pictures of that? Do we have some pictures of those steaks? Yeah, throw up a picture. We got 2 Wagyu tomahawks that were just, and we had some tequila, and it was a good night. But connect that to dessert. He did blow out a candle on a churro. However, ice cream, yes. I don't eat much dessert. Ice cream, you give me a little mint chocolate cookie, I'm a happy guy. Maybe once a month. That's it. You know, trying to keep it clean around here. All right, guys, Gutfeld, the #1 show in late night tonight, and then I believe I'm on Fox and Friends tomorrow morning. Not sure what time that'll be. They kind of adjust you as the day goes by. And Jesse Waters tomorrow evening, couple podcasts during the day, and we'll be sure to get a bunch of stuff up. Thank you. Adios.
Our country was rocking along. We were minding our own business. Our budget was about to run out. We were negotiating with the Democrats. And at the last minute, and we said, look, let's just extend the status quo. We're not asking you for anything else. And at the last minute, Senator Schumer came forward and said, I'm going to shut it down if you don't give me $1.5 trillion and extend the Obamacare subsidies, and I'll tell you how to spend the $1.5 trillion. Well, I remember thinking at the time, look, I'm not Bambi's baby brother here, and Schumer knows I'm not. And my Senate colleagues in the Republican side felt the same way. It was an unserious offer. So we just shut it down, and we never budged. Well, about halfway through, Schumer said, I'm out on a limb here. The Republicans aren't going to budge. I can't get in to see President Trump. So he started looking for a way out. And I think the way out, the 8 Democrats that supposedly broke from their party, I think it was much more carefully orchestrated than they're letting on. Senator Schumer could have gone to these 8 Democrats and said, look, if you do this, I'm going to punish you the rest of your natural life. He didn't do that. I think he was relieved to allow it to happen.
right, guys, this is the Rubin Report. I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is Louisiana Senator and author of the new book, How to Test Negative for Stupid, Senator John Kennedy. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I love your show.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, can I leave all the wit to you today? Because we play clips of you probably 2 or 3 times a week, usually on Fox News, sometimes on some of the other channels, just coming up with these one-liners. And that's really where I want to start today. Where do these one-liners come from? Are they prepackaged? Are they ready to go? Or are they just coming out of your brain as you're live on air?
Well, first, if people don't like what I said in the clips, I deny everything.
Fair.
Number 2, I don't know, Dave. You know, I read a lot, and God blessed me with a good memory. And I grew up in a small town. A lot of my approaches, my perspectives are a result of that. You know, God, I probably sometimes talk too much, but God gave me the right to remain silent, but not the ability. I do bite my tongue. I don't get nearly enough credit for the stuff I don't say. But, you know, I was sent to Washington not to necessarily make friends. I don't try to make enemies, but not to make friends, but to do what I think my people want me to do. And that's what I try to do. I also think that when I've got a few minutes to talk to the American people, I want to speak plainly and frankly, because most Americans, they don't read Aristotle every day. They don't have time. They're earning a living. They get up every day, they go to work, they obey the law, they pay their taxes, they try to do the right thing by their kids. So when they've got a few minutes to listen to the news, I want to give them the straight scoop. And that's what I try to do. And some like it and some don't. People, my friends ask me all the time, they say, you know, how do you sleep at night knowing that some people don't like you? And I tell them the truth with the fan on. You know, you can't make everybody happy in this business.
Indeed, indeed. I also, one of the things that I like about you a lot, not only the sense of humor and that, yeah, you just have sort of an everyman quality about you, is that your political journey, I mean, you were a Democrat also. I was obviously a Democrat. You defected a little bit earlier than me. What was it about the Democrat Party back then, and this is sort of early-ish 2000s, that you saw happening that forced you to leave and become a Republican?
Well, everybody in Louisiana was a Democrat, mostly a conservative Democrat until 2004, 2005, something like that. My first job in government was in state government, and I worked for a Republican governor. So party wasn't that big a deal. But gradually, the foolishness from the National Party seeped in to the Louisiana Democratic Party. And the Louisiana Democratic Party, like the National Party, took a hard left and kept driving. And I just reached the point where I was the state treasurer. All of my legislation was being handled by Republicans, even though I was a Democrat. And my Democratic colleagues didn't like me because I wouldn't toe the line. So I said, okay, no mas, I quit.
So when people hear you say conservative Democrat, those things come off these days as completely antithetical. But what you're talking about, in essence, is sort of what we used to call blue dog Democrats, I guess. Or so what do you think happened to the party itself? Because now it clearly now there's just virtually no moderate Democrat left. I always point to John Fetterman as kind of the last man standing. But what do you think really happened there?
Well, the parties change constantly. And over a period of time, the loon wing, the Bolshevik wing, the socialist wing, whatever you want to call it, of the Democratic Party gradually became ascendant and took power. Now, all Democrats are not members of the socialist wing, but more and more are each day. And those who are more traditional Democrats, a number of them in the Senate, are scared to say anything. A best example is probably Senator Schumer. The leader of the Democratic Party is Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. She's backed up by Senator Sanders, but Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is, in my opinion, is running for one of three things. She's either running for Speaker of the House, she's running against Chuck Schumer for the United States Senate, or she's going to run for president. And her wing of the party is clearly in control. I think it's bad for the Democratic Party, but they've got to make that determination for themselves. I don't think most Americans, I don't think most Democrats, or at least a lot of Democrats, hate George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or Abraham Lincoln or Dr. Zeus or Mr. Potato Head. They don't think they're racist. I don't think most Americans, and frankly, most Democrats, think that our kids ought to be able to change genders at recess. I don't think most Americans or most Democrats hyperventilate on their yoga mats if you use the wrong pronoun. But the loon wing of the Democratic Party does, and they're running the show, and everybody else is scared to death of them. That's why we had a shutdown.
So I want to get to the shutdown in a second, but interestingly, you made a point that I've brought up a couple of times over the last few months, which is I have huge political disagreements with Schumer, but I don't think he hates the country. And I think if this was 20 years ago, he would have just been a moderate Dem, but he's sort of afraid of his own shadow. Are the ones that you call moderate, the Democrats that you now call moderate, do they privately acknowledge what's going on with the party to you, and they just are afraid when it comes to the public battles because they see they've lost the base?
Well, yes, some, and not in so many words. But number two, you learn pretty quickly, you know this, Dave, in politics, what you do is what you believe, not what you say. What you do is what you believe. Everything else is just cottage cheese, man. And I watched what my non-loon wing Democratic colleagues in the Senate do, and not what they say, and they go along. And they have been. It started under it really started under President Obama, but it really accelerated under President Biden. A lot of Democrats in the Senate understood that President Biden was making a huge mistake by opening the border, and President Biden was told to say, not these are my words, not his, that vetting people at the border is racist. Now, I happen to think it's prudent, and most Americans do. But the more moderate Democrats in the U.S. Senate never said a word, not a peep, until the end when they realized that they were in political trouble. And even then, they were very tepid in their criticism.
So let's talk about the shutdown for a minute, because over the last couple of weeks, we played a couple of videos of yours, and you basically laid out exactly what was going to happen and how it was going to wrap up, and you pretty much got it all right. So is that just from you've been through these fights before and you sort of saw an election coming in New York and Virginia, the Dems needed a little bit of juice for it, and that you just knew what the landscape was going to be because you've been in the game?
I think, look, Stevie Wonder could have seen this one coming. Our country, 7 weeks ago, our country was rocking along. We were minding our own business. Our budget was about to run out. We were negotiating with the Democrats. And at the last minute, and we said, look, let's just extend the status quo. We're not asking you for anything else. And at the last minute, Senator Schumer came forward and said, I'm going to shut it down if you don't give me $1.5 trillion and extend the Obamacare subsidies, and I'll tell you how to spend the $1.5 trillion. Well, I remember thinking at the time, look, I'm not Bambi's baby brother here, and Schumer knows I'm not. And my Senate colleagues in the Republican side felt the same way. It was an unserious offer. So we just shut it down, and we never budged. Well, about halfway through, Schumer said, I'm out on a limb here. The Republicans aren't going to budge. I can't get in to see President Trump. So he started looking for a way out. And I think the way out, the 8 Democrats that supposedly broke from their party, I think it was much more carefully orchestrated than they're letting on. Senator Schumer could have gone to these 8 Democrats and said, look, if you do this, I'm going to punish you the rest of your natural life. He didn't do that. I think he was relieved to allow it to happen.
Yeah, and again, I fully credit you because we played a video a few days before it happened where that's exactly what you said was going to happen, and that he would vote no, and then they would jump over. It would kind of have him save face. Not that it's gotten him any credit with the far lefts on his side. Let me ask you about a couple of the issues of the day, because one of the big things that's popping up right now in light of the radicalism of the Democratic Party is that Trump is calling for an end to the filibuster. I know that there's a philosophical argument here and then a sort of realpolitik argument. And I'm caught between those two arguments. I don't want to take power when we have it just because we have it. And on the other hand, I know they would do it. And I know they would pack the courts and do all those other things. So where do you fall on this?
I like the filibuster. And I've told the president that. I've explained to the president that in my judgment, the role of U.S. Senator is twofold. Yes, it's to advance good ideas, but it's also to kill bad ideas. And that's what the filibuster allows you to do. Had we not had the filibuster when Joe Biden was president, God help us all. I mean, we killed a lot of bad ideas and a lot of bad nominees. Now, the president makes a very salient point. He says, Kennedy, but when the Democrats get back in control, they're going to do it. He may be right. But my response to him was, well, let's don't let them back in control. Let's don't let them back in control. And I said, let's get together and win the midterms. One of the things we can do to do that is to pass another reconciliation bill. We passed the one big, beautiful bill, Dave, without a single Democratic vote. We can do 2 more reconciliation bills. But for 7, 8, 10 weeks, maybe longer, the Senate Republicans, we've just been sitting around, pondering our navels. We haven't done anything. And we need to get up off our ice cold, lazy butt, start on another reconciliation bill, welcome the Democrats' support, but we don't need it. And we need to address the cost of living in America, that cost of housing, the costs that are added to goods and services through regulation. We need to address taxes. We need to address other issues that people worry about when they lie down to sleep at night and can't. And if we get some things passed, once again, we don't need any Democratic votes. Then I think the president will feel better and American people will feel better.
What do you make of what I would say is a certain impatience by some people on the right, a little bit out of the base, that they want everything to happen quicker? I mean, on my show every day, it's very easy for me to talk about the administration wins because there are so many. But I'm sensing a certain portion of the right just wants more done quicker, particularly on the economic side. You just mentioned, getting young people into the economy. I mean, do you think that's legit? And what can be done really quickly? I mean, if you were president right now, what would you be doing?
I don't blame folks for being impatient. I'm impatient myself. But you've got to worry about the short term. But remember, the long term is important too. And I think about what would happen if the Democrats ever did get back in charge. And that's the day I prepare for. If I were king for a day, what would I do? I would, in terms of housing costs, we've got a supply problem. I would turn to every major Democratic city and Republican city, but there are not many left in the country, and say, look, if you don't increase housing starts by 5% every year, I'm going to cut your federal funds. If you do increase them over 5%, I will give you a little extra money that I will take from the states and the cities that refuse to increase their housing starts. The message that will help housing immensely. It will help housing immensely. I would talk more if I were the president. He's doing a lot. He's just not talking about it. I would talk more about the massive undertaking that the Trump administration is doing to cut the cost of rules or to cut rules and regulations. That's one of the things that's making the American goods and services cost so much, because all the cost of regulation gets added on. I would take a hard look at another reform of the tax code that stimulates, in particular, small business people. We passed a rule that said to help small businesses, you don't have to pay, if you're a sub-S or an LLC, you don't have to pay taxes on 20% of your income if you leave it in the company. I would double that. They're just, and we can do that in a reconciliation bill without any Democratic votes. And I'm frustrated, as you can tell, that we don't have that bill ready to go. But I've argued with our Republican leadership in the Senate. I'm not, putting anybody down, but I argue repeatedly with Senator Thune and others and say we need to do this. I don't think I've convinced them yet, but I'm going to chase them like they stole Thanksgiving, man, until I get them to agree with me.
Let me just spend the last couple of minutes on the book, because I really did think that the title is just fantastic. How to Test Negative for Stupid, and I think people that know you understand where that title kind of comes from. But one of the bullet points is that it's a field manual for understanding Washington. What do you think, if there was one thing that the average person that kind of pays attention to politics, but not the way you might or that I might, but that just kind of is paying attention, what is the one thing that they don't understand about how it all works or doesn't work that they should understand?
Well, this explains a lot. I would explain to them that in Washington, D.C., normal is a setting on the clothes dryer. In Washington, D.C., common sense is illegal. It doesn't have to be. If we had a return to common sense, you'd have better government. And that's why I've said repeatedly in the book, the water in Washington, D.C. is not going to clear up until you get the pigs out of the creek. It's just that simple. I try to make that point in the book. It's not a policy book per se. It's a story book. I talk about policy through stories. Some of the stories will make you laugh. Some are deeply bizarre. They're all true. And I think the book I hope it'll make folks think, understand how we can fix it. Might make people laugh a little bit, might make them day drink. But everything in the book is true. And I do it through actual stories and experiences that I've had.
It's a good book if someone starts day drinking while reading it. That kind of...
Well, it's unvarnished, man. I mean, it is unvarnished. I talk about President Trump, President Biden, Chuck Grassley, Xi Jinping. I met with him in China. I talk about Chuck Schumer. Everything in there is true.
Well, we'll end with this then, because my team gave me, I told you, we're always playing all of your fun quips on TV all the time, but my guys gave me a whole bunch of your quotes, and I want to see if we can work through this one, because it's related to what I had for lunch today. You said Democrats are the well-intended arugula and tofu crowd. I'm big on arugula. I don't like tofu. I had a steak, but I like arugula. What lettuce should I be switching to?
Well, don't switch to kale, okay?
Kale would be worse. That's right.
Kale to me tastes like I'd rather be fat. You know the way, Dave, here's how you cook kale. You cook it with olive oil because it slides more easily out of the pan into the garbage can, okay? Look, I used that obviously to make a point. The other night I said something about people who have blue hair and like organic broccoli. And I got all kind of text messages. I like broccoli. Okay, eat broccoli. You get the point. But don't carry an NPR tote bag. That's a hard and fast rule, man.
And that seems like the appropriate way to end an all too brief interview. Senator, I hope we can do this again in person. Maybe I'll come to the swamp and we'll see if we can clean it up a little bit.
I'd love to have you come, man. You're a total banger. I love your show, Dave.
Oh, thanks so much, Senator. Enjoyed it. And the book, the link is right down below. Thanks, everybody. If you're craving more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics, check out our politics playlist right here. And if you don't want to miss any future videos, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell.